Wow, that's one of those blows. And a lot of Tchaikovsky is, he marks 6 Fs at some point. I don't even know what that means. This, of course, was the opening to Tchaikovsky 4. It's quite exciting, and it's very exciting to play, and kind of fun if you've, as one of my fine colleagues says, if you've got the chops. Now, what does that mean? For this, I think of this as one of those examples of, big voice orchestral trumpet playing. Now, you're in octaves here, the whole orchestra is playing. What is it important to note when you're preparing this? If you were playing it for an audition, what would they be listening for? So one of the first things is style, actually. What does that mean? You'll hear many people playing this and basically blowing straight through. So it's which is the second trumpet part, as most of you know. I've got some stories about this one, but I'm going to not indulge myself this time because I have a lot to talk about. Okay, what did I just do? Da, 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 da. So I call this pronunciation. Think of it as pronunciation. How am I going to pronounce it? In the orchestra, you must think like a stage actor. If you were acting in Shakespeare. Why? Because until recently, you weren't mic'd at all. You weren't amplified. So your voice had to project all the way to the back of the theater with the enunciation, with the clarity of pronunciation. It's exactly the same here. So how would I play it? So here's the blowing straight through way again. Now, it really doesn't matter how hard I tongue. It doesn't matter how much I'm working in order to get the front on that note. If I don't provide some relief in the sound, then you can't hear the front of the note, especially when the whole orchestra is kind of roaring away, as it is in this passage. So what do you need? You need an explosive attack, but you need relief in front of it. So if you just do these things with your voice, that'll be the easiest way to do it. So instead of going da 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 da, it's like saying dot da 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 da. My fine colleague, Mr. Schluter, who is principal trumpet with the BSO for many, many years, used to show his students, he'd draw a little picture of what the articulation is like. He would draw a small D and a capital O and an H, and then a small T. So it's all about the air flow, and the air has to get past the tongue. So one of the main physical problems with this, playing in the upper register, is that we're pressing against the tongue. We have to produce a lot of energy in order to support the tone in that area, and we end up compressing the air and trying to push it past the tongue. Then the tongue gets tight, and instead of so staying open is the main thing. How do you do that? Well, it's pretty simple. What I suggest for practice technique is play this figure as well as you can in terms of pronunciation and as well as you can in terms of tone in the lower octave. And then gradually, you can do it, arpeggiate your way up. You can do it as a chromatic scale for that matter if you want to build your endurance. But however you do it, what are you cultivating? That big open sound. Now this leads me to the second point. Pronunciation is not just the front. There is shape in the notes. All the notes have length. Notes always have length. Sometimes it's very little length. But if you think in terms of not short or marcato, you think in terms of what length you're going to play, your body is going to understand, oh, I'm letting the air flow through that. And that all you're doing is sustaining here. You're just sustaining an A flat, concert A flat. And pronouncing it. So if you're not supporting properly, you're going to tend to squeeze the air and back it up behind the tongue, and then everything will become very strained. So as you work your way up from the lower octave, develop that singing, that operatic style. One of my former students, I think it's been, 20 years, maybe 30, since we worked together. But I recently gave him a kind of an impromptu lesson. He's been getting back into playing the trumpet. And he's discovered this on his own. And it's one of the main concepts. Play like an opera singer. I think Mr. Bond has recently written or released a book, published a book, that has to do exactly with this. When you sit in the pit for one of the great opera houses of the world, you're listening to how the singers breathe. You're hearing how they produce resonance. That's what you want to emulate. You must get a chance, take any chance to hear a real opera singer, especially a Wagnerian singer, which is what this is kind of like. Dramatic, held in tenor. The power of the voice is immense, and they can project over a 100-piece orchestra. It's much louder than a trumpet. I know I've sat in front of some of these singers, with a chorus behind you in the orchestra. Sometimes it gets a little bit overwhelming. You almost have to put in earplugs sometimes because it's so loud. So we think we play the loud instrument, but actually the human voice, when it's trained properly, is the loud instrument. You're trying to emulate that. That's probably the most important thing I can tell you with this particular passage. Now, what are they going to listen for in an audition? Well, they're going to listen for consistency in the attacks. They're going to listen for the tone quality. They're going to listen for that, what I was just talking about, the length and the shape of the notes. So I need you to listen for these things as well. This is called the fate passage. So this is like the hammer of fate. And any way you can think about it where it makes sense emotionally, where it makes sense in terms of the drama, and then listen to your sound and ask yourself, does that get the idea across in the tone of my voice, in the way I'm pronouncing it? That will solve most of your musical expression problems. But you have to be very honest with yourself in order to have that work for you. Okay, there's another little thing that they're going to listen for. And you're playing duplets, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. Da, dee, dee, da, 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 da. Well, there's a triplet, that's a subdivision. But the tricky subdivision for most people is dun, dun, da, 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 ding, ding, ding. So simplify it. It's a triplet. So forget the 16th. Da, 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 dee, da. It's the first two notes that are important. Then get your subdivision, do, 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 ba, ba, and listen. If you record yourself doing this, and then you listen back, you should hear, and I hope I do, I have to be honest, I didn't prepare this, but here we are. That's the kind of thing, take it easy, work on it for the pronunciation without strain, the big voice, and the power of the rhythm, the purity and the intensity and the true quality of the rhythm. That's what they're listening for. The better you get at those essential things, the more convincing this performance is going to be. Now, I honestly don't know whether I did this correctly or not. Because, again, as usual, I guess my brain's getting old here. I kind of lost my train of thought and went on automatic pilot. There's that little passage where it goes, don, don, di, ding, don, don. And it's very easy, and some of you, I'm sure, have experienced this, to lose track of where the beat is when you're doing that. You're playing very physically intensely, and you're going, where is that? Okay, these are all off beats. Am I in the right place? So I've seen, even in the greatest orchestras, written in the parts, either slash marks showing the beat. Dun, dun, to 1, 1, 2, 3. So and count it. If you need to count it in your head, do that. But the way I like to try and do it, and I hope I did it. It'll be embarrassing if I didn't, but is don don da dee bo don don da don don don. That's what if I know where that downbeat is, then I know where I am. So this is a great example of how we need to know where we are in the bar at all times. We can be doing the rhythm correctly, feeling the subdivision, really, really well. But if you lose track of where you are on the bar, you've kind of lost gravity, in a sense. You need to find out where the bass is, and that's it. Now, going into that, I'll play just a little section again, and then I'll let you go, because I think you'll probably want to practice this. Actually not. I'm going to play something that's a tremendous contrast to this. This is in the same piece, which is the second movement, which is called pizzicato ostinato. We'll get to that in a minute. But here, there's a couple ways of phrasing it that you'll hear. So just a word of advice, practical advice. If you're auditioning for an orchestra, and you really want to get that job, which is always the good way to go into, a good mindset to go into it with, listen to the recordings that they do of the piece. I think it's New York Philharmonic, I could be wrong about that, but they phrase it a little bit differently than many people do. And you need to think about how you're going to phrase and do it on purpose. Now, if you hear the orchestra that you're wishing to become a member of, phrasing certain passages that are on the audition list in a certain way, and it's consistent when you listen to different recordings with different conductors, you have a pretty good idea that they've worked it out to do it the way they want to. Now, of course, we're the servants, in a sense. We're serving the musical imagination of the conductor, and he's the unifying force, he or she are the unifying force to bring us all together with that one idea. So you need to be flexible about changing this, but some of you might have noticed that the way I phrased it was da 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 da. So I breathed after the eighth note. And so I'll play it that way. Okay, so that's one way of doing it, but you'll hear it very often taking the breath after the dotted quarter note. Why? It's easier. Dun, dun. So you're going dun, dun, da, da, bum, 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 ba, ba. That's a totally different phrase. You get it? These are the details you need to consider because you want a as clear as possible picture of what you're going to do with the music. Okay, I think that's probably enough on this one. This few bars here, 8 bars or so of music. Now let's go to the pizzicato ostinato. So you're playing these powerful big opera voice double fortes, treble forte, quintuple forte, sextuple forte, whatever Tchaikovsky writes. You're trying to get that power in the sound. And then he switches it right around and says, okay, now it's pianissimo and you're going to play really short. But remember what I just said. Every note has a length. So I'm going to play the little brass version. The first trumpet is leading this. The whole brass section is playing the pizzicato. But for us, obviously, it's staccato. So I'm going to play this as a line. So you get the idea. That's very important because the way most people think about this is t, 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 t. So they're playing individual notes, not the line. If you keep your body open and you do it as you would speak it, ta, 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 not ta, 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 ta. What I just did, that's one of the biggest problems that almost all trumpet players have, to one extent or another. What they're doing is ta, ta, and closing the glottis. I was just working with a prospective student at NEC, came to take a lesson with me yesterday, and this was the main thing that was messing up his playing. When that happens, ta, ta, even if it doesn't close all the way, ta, 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 You're going to, instead of totally soft and open, you're going to have problems with this. And almost everybody does it to some extent. So how do you get over that? That's a good question. I have to go more deeply into that at some other time. But I'm going to try and play this and see if I can give you a good rendition of it. I'm trying to play it from memory and I just lost it. Yum, bum, 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 ding, dun, dun, dun. This is why it's good to get those things in your ear. I didn't trust myself. I knew what it was, but I didn't trust myself. So that's a little personal confession. Now, I was playing with it a little bit. What was I trying? Well, I played it a little bit louder. I played it a little bit softer. I was working the note lengths. The goal is actually very simple. If you find the voice, the quality of the voice, and remember something that will help you to get that. Every time you play a note, it's part of a chord in this particular passage. And that's oftentimes the case when we're playing in a large ensemble. And so the whole brass section is playing it every time everybody in the brass section, every individual, when that sounds really, really good, it's because people are playing the same note length, the same note shape, the same quality of resonance, and all the notes are... Sorry, I have to allow for my extremely rude neighbors who drive cars with no mufflers on them. But, sorry, no more distraction. Everybody's listening to unify the musical concept of what's going on. So, I'm going to try a little bit of this again and do it slower, so hopefully you can hear some of these things. Now, you never have to play this very soft in the orchestra. What you need is balance. So you start, maybe, mezzo piano, maybe even mezzo forte. The main musical ingredient is the tone quality and those matching all the shapes, as I said, and the qualities of the articulation, the pitch, so that all the chords lock together. Now, any experienced player knows this. Many of you out there know this. But training yourself to do it, that's a different issue. Just thinking of it as part of a chord will help. I suppose now there's probably technology where if you want to stop a recording and sustain the sound, that a computer could do that. So you could hear each one of these as a sustained chord. Wow, that would be really good training if we could do that. So if somebody out there knows how to do that without spending a whole lot of money, feel free to get in touch with me. That'd be a great practice method. So you see, there are a lot of ingredients. I just threw a whole bunch of them at you. The note length. It's interesting, he wrote 16ths. He didn't write staccato 8th notes. He wrote 1, 2, 1. So it's 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. So it's a full-length 16th. That will help a lot to play it physically. If you're thinking of it as a short note, then you tend to and spit the note out, which works, but it doesn't produce the same kind of resonance and body in the sound. You're going to have trouble matching with the other people in the section. So I think that's going to be probably enough for you to work on in order to put some of these things into practice. The thing about stopping it with the throat is key. There are other ways of doing it. I'll just tell you two, and this goes into, again, a deeper dive into articulation qualities. If I go, so I have a certain length of air, as I said, same energy as if I were sustaining the note at whatever volume. Same position to get the perfect resonance on that note. So the key is you can do it open, in other words, t, so nothing is closed. If a small insect could fly around, go in my mouth, fly down around inside the lungs, and come back out again. Well, probably not, but it's a nice cartoon image. The idea is that everything is open. There's nothing constricted. There's no impingement of the air moving in or the air moving out. Everything stays open. Now, you can also do that with a tongue stop. So instead of saying toot, 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 now you're going toot, 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 toot. So in the rest, you're actually holding with the tongue in position. What I'm going to recommend for you to do is practice that both ways. Practice when you're warming up. It's a great time to do it. If you just play a single note, since that's in my ear, I'm going to go ahead and play that one. Now, the key is in keeping your support engaged without stiffening. Everything needs to be kind of loose. It's difficult to describe. I'm trying. When you do it with the tongue stop, toot, 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 you're basically saying toot. Again, my fine colleague, Mr. Schluter, that's his email address, Charlie Toot. And I think that was a little bit of a sense of humor on his part, because he used to use tongue stopping all the time. Our teachers tell us don't do that, but actually it's extremely useful. The caveat to that is don't stop with the tongue and slam the air into that tongue. If your air is flowing correctly with proper support, you're not going to be and get that really rough, kind of obnoxious cutoff with the tongue. Unless you're playing a big band, in which case that really explosive kind of sound on the cutoff is exactly what you want. So it's not like, you know, there's a law against it. It's just that it can make you really tight unless you know what you're doing. So I'm going to do just sustained. So that's lyrical. You should play that phrase. You should play that line. Then I'm going to do it sustained, articulated. This is a great progression, I would call it, a progression, a kind of a pathway to get where you want to go. Then I'm going to separate it. I'm a little tight when I do that. I'm trying to stay open. So now I'm going to stop it with the tongue. You get the idea? Well, maybe not, but if you do it, you will get the idea. So it's time to go practice now. I hope this has been a useful session for you, and I hope you join me again, and I hope we get to meet sometime. This has been fun. Have a good day. I'll see you later on. Bye-bye.